Bien, muy buenas tardes a todos. Estamos dando inicio a otro de los magníficos webinar de la compañía Italcol que hoy estamos organizando en patrocinio de la compañía BAS y interesados nosotros en el tema de la acuacultura en general, pues nos surte hoy la necesidad de hacer tecnología y de hacer educación en el tema del camarón. Muy bien, para esto nos acompaña hoy el doctor Tran. El doctor Tran es CEO de la empresa Shrimp Veterinary Laboratories. Está ubicado en este momentico en Asia y es una persona de reconocida experiencia, además de ser profesor asistente de la Facultad de Fishery, de la Facultad de Peces, y de la Universidad Estatal en Ho Chi Minh, en Vietnam. El doctor Loc Tran va a hablar del enfoque holístico para el manejo de enfermedades en el camarón. Vamos entonces a utilizar la misma temática que hemos venido utilizando a lo largo de nuestros webinars de la compañía Italcol, en donde, para el día de hoy, pues tenemos una traducción simultánea y al finalizar haremos las preguntas pertinentes. Muy bien, bienvenidos entonces a todos. Esperamos que esto sea del mayor agrado de ustedes y del mayor beneficio. Nos acompañan participantes de Ecuador y de Centroamérica, de manera que bienvenidos a todos, así como de Colombia. Doctor Lotran, hello.
Hello, yes.
Thank you for your attention.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody. And this is Tran. It's an honor for me to be a guest speaker for BSF, a technical webinar on shrimp disease management. And today we will focus on holistic approaches in disease control of some most relevant disease in shrimp farming worldwide. So in this photo, we see 5 shrimp representing for most important infectious disease in shrimp farming, to my understanding. In this photo, we have 5 shrimp. They were originally from the same batch, but they were subjected to different disease challenge. Starting from the right is an SPF shrimp with a normal healthy looking shrimp, and the letter number D next to the letter number E is the EHB infected shrimp, which is a parasitic disease causing stunt growth, slow growth, and this causes massive economic losses in shrimp farming. In the center is the letter number C, is EMS or APEN infected shrimp. And this disease was first recorded in 2009 and starting to spread to several shrimp farming countries worldwide. And this is a toxicosis governed by bacteria. And this caused a lot of mortality worldwide, including in Latin America. The letter number B showing white feces infected animal. And this was experimentally infected in my laboratory. And white feces become a major problem in intensive farming worldwide. And letter number A showing a white spot infected animal, and white spot is the most contagious and deadly viral disease for farming. In this photo, it showed two shrimp from the same EMS infected pond. The shrimp in the right is showing a normal, healthy looking with the stomach full of feed, and the midgut is okay, and the hepatopancreas looks normal. Meanwhile, the shrimp in the left showing empty stomach, midgut, and the hepatopancreas turned pale and shrunken. And this was due to the bacterial toxin released by EMS bacteria. And in this photo, it was from one of our experiments. Looking at the photo in the letter number D in the right corner, bottom, we see the stomach and midgut full with feed and fecal material, and the hepatopancreas or HP look healthy and darkened and brownish. Meanwhile, the letter number B representing for this, the animal after being infected with the bacteria, EMS bacteria, Vibrio parahemolyticus. And the bacteria colonize the stomach and midgut and releasing the toxin, causing the HB to turn whitish and shrunken. And the reason for EMS was due to bacterial toxin, PRAB, in a plasmid that were hijacked the bacteria, Vibrio parahemolyticus, and the bacteria releasing the toxin, causing the HP destruction. And the source of infection of EMS, so far as we recorded, first is from post-larvae, infected post-larvae. So if the hatchery is contaminated with EMS, it can produce EMS infected animal. And when you have EMS infected animal in the hatchery, you may observe the mortality in the hatchery or after transfer to the grower pond or within 2 weeks of stocking into the grower pond. In the grower pond, if we observe EMS infected animal after the grower phase, let's say after 1 or 2 months of stocking, it could be due to originally from EMS infected animal or from the contamination and pollution in the pond, resulting in the searching of Vibrio. And the bacteria or the pathogen can be accumulated in the environment, in the sediments and surfaces after crops as well. Moving on, we go to another disease named EHP or anthracytozoon hepatopenia. This is a microsporidian disease with the parasite attacking shrimp hepatopancreas, and the parasite will attack the cell cytoplasm of the hepatopancreas. And when the cell are loaded with the parasite, the cell will be bursted. And after it bursts, it releases a lot of spores. In this photo, I capture a photo of a newly burst cell releasing a lot of EHB spores, and the spore will be deposited into the gut and will be released into the pond and causing a circle of infection. And EHB cause shrimp to not able to grow, or the growth will be substantially reduced. And this causes a lot of economic losses. And with regards to EHB detection using gross symptoms, for post-larvae, it is very difficult to tell if the post-larvae are EHB infected or not, because the contamination might be quite slight. However, if you see a lot of size variation in a BL batch, you can raise a question whether they are suffering from EHB infection or not. In grow-out pond, after you stock the pond with EHB infected animal, you may observe some abnormality after the shrimp reach 2 to 3 grams, because at that stage, usually the growth may stop or substantially reduce. And you will see some size variation, a lot of size variation. The HB of the shrimp may be shrunken, and the shell of the animal might be loose. The animal may experience soft shell as well. In this photo, we demonstrate the route of transmission of EHB. Looking at the photo in the right corner bottom, you may see that we put a HAPA net, and we just put an EHB infected animal inside the net, and we put the healthy SPF animal from outside. And after being fed, the infected animal will release EHB contaminated fecal matter, and it will transmit the pathogen to the SPF shrimp from outside very easily. And after a few weeks of the experiment, we can observe a very big size differences between the SPF shrimp or the negative control versus the EHB infected animal. And the EHB infected animal will be a lot smaller because they are not growing. They were not growing. Here is investigation survey conducted by our laboratory. So we receive a lot of samples from hatchery, from post-larvae submitted by farmers. And also we collect sample from grow-out pond in 2018 and 2019. And we check for 2 diseases, EMS and EHB. We got a total of around 5,000 samples. And we did the statistic, and it shows something quite interesting. So looking at the percentage of infection of post-larvae for EMS, in 2018, we observed about 10% of infection rate, but in 2019 it surged to 27.7%. For EHB in 2018, it was 3. .1%. 19 is searched. So when we look at the very bottom rate or the prevalence of EMS in grow-out shrimp or the juveniles, in 2018 it was 17%. In 2019, it increased to 33%. And very similarly, for EHP in 2018, it was around 40%. In 2019, it showed like 60% of prevalence of infection or contamination. And we could demonstrate the route of transmission for this, starting from push stock live feed, because you can also see that the push stock live feed is quite contaminated with pathogen. And we transfer the pathogen to the push stock, and the push stock will release the offspring contaminated with the pathogen. And then it will transfer to the post-larvae stage and to the grow-out pond. And we could also see the contamination become accumulated in both hatcheries and in the grow-out ponds. Okay, so moving on to another disease named white physis syndrome. Or now I call it white physis disease because we know more about them. So this usually happens in intensive farms when we farm shrimp of more than 30 pieces per square meter. And it causes the shrimp to release white fecal matter. And the consequences of that is the shrimp may reduce feeding and also experience slower growth, higher in FCR, and also some mortality. However, the causation of white physis disease was still under controversy. And in our laboratory, we have been working hard on identifying the causation of this and also understanding more about the mechanism of the disease. And in the pond, usually this disease happens when the shrimp are more than 30 days old after stocking. And usually it happens in pond with eutrophication or pollution and overblooming and crush of algae in pond. And also in pond with bad feeding management or overfeeding, it is more likely that the pond may experience white physis. So all of those phenomena that I already described may contribute to the blooming of bacteria in the pond. So that is why we work hard on trying to prove a bacteria etiology causation of white physis. In this photo, we could demonstrate that we were able to isolate the white physis causing bacteria in the infected animal in the field. And we could reproduce the same symptoms of white physis in the experiment by putting the bacteria on feed and feeding to healthy shrimp And after a few days, the gut turned white. And pathology showing exactly the same symptoms as of white physis infected animal in the pond. So in this sense of experiment, we could clearly demonstrate that there were some Vibrio strain at certain density. It will cause white physis syndrome as observed in the field. We also see some interaction between white physis and EHP. So first point is that Vibrio, no doubt, is the primary agent causing white physis because the bacteria alone in the laboratory setup could induce white physis. However, if the animal have a condition of pre-infection with EHP, they become more susceptible to white physis because the manifestation of EHP or the infection of EHP causing the hepatopancreas structure compromise, and it becomes an open gate for white physis bacteria to attack the animal. On the other hand, if we observe a pond with massive Vibrio attack, like white physis infected pond, and the pond is slightly contaminated with EHP. So after the infection of Vibrio, the animal become a lot more susceptible to EHP and eventually become EHP infected animal. So in this case, both diseases may work together. Either of them can compromise the shrimp defense system and make the animal become more susceptible to the other disease. So this is why in the field we may observe two types of white physis: recoverable, meaning only white physis bacteria infection or Vibrio infection alone. This could be treated. However, we also see a combination of white physis and EHP, and in this case, this disease is not treatable because until now we have no mitigation method for EHP infected animal. And with regards to disease control, we have developed a protocol for hatchery to produce EHP-free animal. And I think this is the most important point for us to control EHP. So first is that we need to take care of sanitation in hatchery, including biosecurity, SOP, safety, biosecurity manual must be strictly implemented in the hatchery. And also we need to be sure that the hatchery is properly disinfected after each production cycle by using relevant chemical like sodium hydroxide, bleach, potassium permanganate, and also fumigation. But I think the most important point is that we need to treat the live feed because the live feed is the source of contamination by freezing the live feed before feeding to the broodstock. And this was clearly demonstrated that after several hours of normal freezing, all EHP spore become inactivated. They are not infectious. They are not infective any longer. And the other step is that after we harvest the nuclei, we can do nuclei wash using formalin at 200 ppm for 30 seconds. And most importantly, we need to check the broodstock feces to be sure if they are carrying the EHB or not, nuclei. And very obviously, we need to test the post-larvae before harvest and transfer to the pond. In the pond, there are a couple of steps that we need to take into consideration. So first is that we need to keep the pond clean and be sure that we are not importing any EHB infected animal into the pond. So that is why any batch of coming post larvae must be tested for EHB using PCR. Second is that we need to be sure that the water is properly disinfected. And this is applied for intensive farming. I'm not talking about extensive farming like in Latin America, Ecuador. And we need also to test for the pond sediments and make sure they are EHB free. So if they are EHB contaminated, the pond sediments, we need to disinfect the pond bottom using calcium oxide at the rate of 600 kg per 1,000 square meter. So those are steps before stocking. And these are coming steps of EHB control during the culture. First is that we need to observe the the shrimp growth performance. So when the shrimp reach 2 grams or 30 days of culture, normally the shrimp will grow at the rate of 0.3 to 0.4 grams a day for SPF stock, and for SPR stock, they usually grow at 0.2 to 0.25. But if you observe a consistent slow growth of, let's say, 50% less than what is expected, we need to have a question mark whether they are EHB infected or not. And in this case, we need to send sample for EHB test. And if the growth is way below the rate that farms can make money, we need to consider doing the harvest. But if the growth is still higher than the rate that farmer can make money, and we know that they are EHB contaminated, we need to protect the animal from any potential white physis disease to come. Because if white physis attack the animal or Vibrio attack the animal will become a lot more susceptible, a lot more sensitive to EHB. And in that case, it will worsen the situation. Another disease that we also observe in farming is muscle necrosis. And this becomes a more common problem in farming. So normally, typically, the shrimp may experience muscle whitish during the culture, and the animal exhibiting this symptom may result in mortality later on. So sometimes farmers may attribute this syndrome to mineral deficiency. However, if you see muscle whitish resulting in mortality, it's not likely to be mineral deficiency, but it's more like Vibrio infection. In this photo, we did the histology of the whitish muscle, and we could see something very interesting, that the muscle is loaded with bacteria. And if you look at the place of the arrow, you may see some rod-shaped bacteria at 1,000 magnification. We can see the muscle is loaded with bacteria and causing the muscle fiber destruction. So this was very clearly is a Vibrio or bacterial infection. So there are some possibility causing the muscle necrosis. First is IMNV, or infectious immune necrosis virus. This is not likely to be the causation of the symptom I already described, because IMNV is reported from Latin America and Indonesia, not in Vietnam, not in other countries in Southeast Asia. But the etiology or the causation of Vibrio havii was demonstrated in the laboratory. So that means we could isolate the bacteria and infect the animal, healthy animal, and the animal exhibiting exactly the same symptoms. And this symptom or this disease usually happen in pond of more than 30 days of culture, and the pond may experience eutrophication, overblooming of algae, and algae crash, low oxygen, and also low in alkalinity. We also observe something quite similar in India, that farmers over there may describe this as running mortality syndrome. I'm not sure because we haven't confirmed this yet, but to my feeling, I feel like the running mortality syndrome could be likely to be this disease. And again, this photo showing a subsequent challenge study showing that we can either infect the animal via the water or injection. The animal will experience the muscle necrosis. And in order to control this disease, we have prevention and also intervention methods. For prevention, first we need to make sure that the pond is clean and the algae bloom is under good control. Make sure that the density is not too high, or we may need to do partial harvest when the pond already reached its carrying capacity. That means, let's say when we stock with a lot of animals, and then when they grow up, the biomass in the pond become too large, and the animal may experience this because there will be a lot of wound, a lot of contact amongst them, causing some small wound leading to the infection. In that case, we need to do partial harvest and make sure the oxygen is high and the shrimp is healthy via some methods to improve the shrimp immunity. And also we have the intervention methods, and this means that if we already observe some mortality in the pond due to the muscle necrosis, one thing we can do is that first we need to do water exchange immediately. And after the water exchange has been done, usually at late afternoon or nighttime, we can apply disinfection using iodine at 1 ppm. And we can also put some prophylaxis or approved drugs in the feed to treat the infection. And then we have to follow all the measures of prevention again. Here are a couple principles and key steps for disease management, to my understanding. First is that we need to evaluate the health status of the PL and make sure that we have access to disease-free and healthy post-larvae. Second is that we need to be sure that the pond is properly disinfected. Third is that we need to inoculate or pluming the pond with good probiotics prior to stocking. And also we need to control algae immediately before and after stocking. And during the culture, we have to monitor the shrimp health to detect any early sign of infection. Fifth is that we can also do a nursery phase, and I will talk a little bit about some important point of nursery phase that we need to take into consideration. And the point number 6 is that we need to improve the shrimp health immediately, and we can also apply some know-how of feed fermentation to improve the digestibility and disease control, and prophylaxis or feed additives in feed for prophylaxis and also for shrimp health improvement. With regards to post-larvae PL health evaluation, there's a couple steps for us to check. First, we need to be sure that the animal are free of all of those diseases, including white spot syndrome virus and other relevant viruses, if needed, in Latin America, EHP and EMS. This is needed. For microbiology test, we can do the plating using the post-larvae sample and be sure that they are not showing any luminescent bacteria, and also the density of green vibrio is not too high. We can also perform formalin and salinity stress test, and we can follow the FAO manual for formalin and salinity stress test for post-larvae. And to my experience, the PL must have more than 90% survival rate after either of those stress tests in order to be qualified as healthy. And we need to also check for the size variation. And if the shrimp exhibiting a lot of size variation is likely due to bad genetics or any potential infection. For pond cleaning before stocking or after each crop, we have two types of shrimp pond: plastic lined pond and earthen pond. For the plastic lined pond, first step is that we need to be sure that we can physically, chemically remove any contamination in the biofilm on the surfaces of the liner. And after that, we can apply some disinfectant like sodium hydroxide or formalin or organic acid like citric acid to disinfect the liner, and then we can wash the liner with fresh water and let it sun dry. And this process will eliminate any potential pathogen accumulated from the previous crops. For the earthen pond, I think it's very important that after the crop, we need to remove as much sediments in the pond as possible. And then we need to test for any contamination like EHP in the soil. And if the soil or sediment is contaminated with EHP, we need to disinfect the pond using calcium oxide. For probiotic inoculation, I think this is very important to be sure that the animal will be healthy, and it will substantially reduce any potential infection of Vibrio. So, and this could be done by inoculating the pond with activated probiotics right after the disinfection process has been done. And we need to be sure that the pond turbidity reach 30 to 35 centimeter with probiotic before stocking with post-larvae. And quite importantly, with intensive pond, like now, every places in the world, we are doing a lot of intensive farming. And in intensive pond, usually we put a lot of bottom aeration. And we have to be very careful with early weeks of stocking, because we can blooming the algae very quickly, and the blooming become uncontrollable. And the algal bloom and crash later on will result in a lot of bad consequences. And that is why during the very first week and second weeks of culture, we need to be sure that the aeration is just gentle enough, and don't add any additional minerals or nutrient, because it may cause some overblooming of algae. For the nursery phase, quite importantly, that we need to be sure that we inoculate the probiotic in the water before stocking with the post-larvae. Don't stock the post-larvae into clear water, because they will be very susceptible to Vibrio. And after stocking with the post-larvae into the nursery pond, we should not use dust feed. Instead, we should continue on with the hatchery feed for 5 to 7 days before we can switching to crumble feed. And we need also to do regular water exchange and siphoning on daily basis. And typically the density in the nursery is from 1,500 animals to 3,000 animals per square meter or cubic meter. And after 15 to 25 days, the animal will reach about 0.3 to 3 grams, and then we can transfer them to the grow-out pond. For EMS and whitefish intervention, first, we need to be sure that we can detect any early sign of EMS or whitefish as soon as we can. And if this already happened in the pond, we need to be very proactively intervene and keep the disease under control. First step, we need to reduce feeding immediately if we see any early sign of EMS or any mortality caused by EMS, because we know that in coming days, the shrimp may experience mortality, lethargic, and reduced in feeding. So if we keep feeding the animal with a lot of feed, we are feeding a lot of nutrient to the Vibrio. That is why we need to reduce feeding after we see any sign of EMS or whitefishes. Second, we know that the pond is already polluted. We need to do as much water exchange as we can, and also doing proper siphoning and make sure that the pond bottom become clean again. We need to also reduce the algal density in the pond, and this could be done by gradual, continuous application of probiotics into pond at nighttime. And the probiotic must be activated first. So that means we can mix probiotic in water and molasses and doing the aeration for 24 hours, and then you can apply that probiotic into the pond at nighttime. And we need to do this on a daily basis for a few days, and it will reduce the algal density in the water. We can also apply calcium oxide into pond at nighttime to reduce the algal density. We must not use chemical to kill algae during the attack or the outbreak of EMS or whitefishes in the pond, because a fast die-off of algae, if we do this, will result in the deposition of algae in pond bottom, and shrimp will feed on that algae, and that may result in mortality, more mortality. And because we already reduced the feeding rate, we need to double or even triple the amount of probiotic in feed, or any prophylaxis and any additives on the feed. And with regards to prophylaxis, we can use acidifier organic acid or monoglyceride in feed. Is quite safe to reduce the bacteria in the shrimp gut. And we can also doing feed fermentation to feed the animal. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about feed fermentation or soybean fermentation. We found it's very interesting that if we can inoculate the probiotic on some substrate and let them proliferate, the substrate becomes something like medicine for the animals. And this process includes a couple of steps you can see over here. First is that we need to cook the soybean crumble or soybean meal, and then let it cool down and mix that cooked soybean with molasses or sugar. And we need to also add some enzyme. A cheap enzyme that you can find is young pineapple juice or young papaya juice. And then we mix that slurry with probiotics, gut probiotics, and let it ferment naturally in 24 hours. And then you can feed that fermented soybean to the animals for improving the shrimp gut health or for disease mitigation. And the principle for this is quite interesting, that even though bacteria, the probiotics, usually proliferate a lot slower than Vibrio in the same condition. However, if we can activate or culture the probiotics on substrate, they will produce some substances that will kill the Vibrio. And in this photo, it shows very clearly that the probiotics, after being activated, it produces something that will inhibit the growth of bacteria. Here is a couple results that we have been working on in experiment using different substrate, different additives, different immunostimulation substrate to improve the shrimp health. And we use different challenge model, different pathogen to evaluate the effects of those additives. So in this photo, in this experiment, we evaluate the effects of yeast in improvement of shrimp health. And in the first experiment in the left, you can see that in the positive control, meaning that the shrimp were fed with normal feed, experienced close to only 30% survival rate after being challenged with EMS. Meanwhile, in the treatment group, you can see a gradual increase of survival rate with the increment of inclusion rate of yeast, meaning that the yeast can improve the shrimp health and make the shrimp more robust, and they survive better in an EMS challenge. We also evaluate the effects of some single cell protein from fermentation process in shrimp health. And we found it's very interesting that at certain inclusion rate, typically from 6 to 9%, it will improve the shrimp health very significantly. Like in this trial, you see in the positive control, the survival rate was only around 22%. But in a particular group of inclusion rate, the survival rate was close to 70%, meaning that it could really improve the shrimp health. And it makes the shrimp a lot more robust, a lot more stronger in Vibrio attack. However, if we increase the dosage to a certain level, this effect might be flattened, probably because of overwhelming the immune system of the shrimp or because of the imbalance of the nutrition. In this trial, we also evaluate the effects of some essential oil in improvement of survival rate. And there are a couple very interesting essential oil can also reduce the vibrio attack and also improve the shrimp health. And this explains why in some particular treatment in this trial, the survival rate was a lot better. Here's another trial. We use fermented plant protein concentrate and put it in shrimp diet. And at certain level, it improved the survivability a lot in the challenge study. Probably because the fermentation process already produced some prophylaxis and also some immunostimulation molecules. Here's a trial showing the dose responses of different inclusion rate of the fermented protein concentrate. And we see it's very interesting that we start seeing the effects at 6% inclusion rate. But when it reached like 9%, it reached the highest survival rate. And then if we go beyond that, we will not see any further improvement. So probably around 9% or less than 10% is a perfect inclusion rate of this ingredients. So as already described, that 6 to 9% of plant protein, fermented plant protein, may result in a very good survivability, pigmentation of the animals. But we also see a lot improvement in color and shrimp health if we add synthetic carotenoids in the feed as well. And this also improves the shrimp stress tolerance, as well as improving the shrimp color. And this will also improve the price or the commodity value of the shrimp. So this is a very interesting trial sponsored by BASF. So we check for different combination of astaxanthin or carotenoids with other bentonite and formic acid. And there's a couple very interesting treatment showing that the shrimp color was a lot improved compared with the negative control or the basal diet. So this clearly indicate that we can improve the shrimp health, improve the stress tolerance by using correct dosage of carotenoids. And this is the shrimp, those are shrimp harvested in our pond trial using different feed with different concentration of astaxanthin or leucantin pink from BSF. And we can clearly see that the shrimp in the photo in the far right is a lot better than the others, showing that the shrimp is a lot nicer, and those animals are a lot stronger because they can tolerate to stress much better, and the commercial value of them is much higher than the others. And we also did a lot of study on the potential effects of monoglyceride for prophylaxis effects, prophylactic effects. And we could demonstrate that at certain inclusion rate, it improved the shrimp health a lot because it can really reduce the vibrio load in the shrimp gut, resulting in a much stronger animal and less vibrio attack, resulting in better growth and any growth performance. And after of those research, we move on to a pond trial, to several pond trial, and it's consistently showing a much better performance of the treatment pond or monoglyceride versus the control pond. So in this trial, it showed that typically with the same pond size, same stocking density, we could harvest the animal a lot earlier because they already reached the marketable size. And in this trial, when it reached the marketable size, we harvest and sell. And the pond is much cleaner, so we don't need to do much water exchange in the entire crop. And the yield was higher, like 10% higher. And also the feed was consumed less because the FCR was more efficient, 1.3 compared to 1.55. The survivability was slightly better, and quite importantly that the revenue was higher because the yield was more and the size of the animal was bigger, and that result in much higher in profitability. The production cost was less because the culture periods was shortened. And over here, we see the production cost for this trial for the monoglyceride pond was $3.5 US per kg. In Vietnam, the production cost is quite high because of the feed cost. But in the control, it was about 11-12% higher than of the control. And that results in the net profit for the monoglyceride pond was about 40% higher than of the control. And that also results in the return on investment for the monoglyceride pond was much higher than of the control, and the gross margin was also a lot higher. So we can clearly see that an improvement of growth performance, higher in feed utilization, better in FCR, better in survival rate, a slight improvement may result in a lot higher in profitability. So in conclusion of my presentation is that we can clearly see that the disease outbreak is not just only because of the pathogen, but is also the result of a lot other stresses in the culture, making the shrimp more susceptible to any potential pathogen in the ponds. And in order to control the disease, we need to be sure that the three things must be properly implemented. First is the biosecurity. Second is to improve the shrimp health. And third is to make sure that the pond is clean and the microbiology in the pond, the microbiota in the pond is stable. And we also see that a lot of potential use of better ingredients, prophylaxis, and the prophylaxis, like monoglyceride, like carotenoids, like organic acid, like other things, can be put directly into the feed, and that result in a lot better in growth performance and disease management. And we can also see that making what we call functional feed is viable. And I think making a complete diet with prophylaxis, with disease control, and immunostimulation, improving shrimp health is viable with all the science that we already developed. And I think this could be ultimately a solution or a new direction for shrimp farming, making the farming a lot safer and more profitable. Thank you.
Dr. Locke, thank you for your presentation. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Diego.
Señor. Señor.
Hello.
Dr. Locke, do you accept any question, please?
I see the question, but in Spanish. Can you please help me translate? I can answer live.
Yes. Doctor Diego, te las hago llegar y tú las traduces. Bueno, voy a ver cómo... ¿Miguel está ahí?
Sí.
Doctores, si Diego puede acceder al panel de preguntas y respuestas, ya tenemos varias preguntas ahí escritas por los asistentes. Es
por favor.
las al doctor para que pueda responderlas.
Bueno, yo estoy viendo aquí unas. Doctor Diego, ¿tú has podido entrar? Doctor Diego, ¿tú has podido ver las preguntas? Doctor Remolina. Sí, señor, te oigo.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well. Please help me translate the
No
question.
Problem. What is the reason to recommend water disinfection of the pond with the muscle necrosis in
Okay.
the night hours of the day?
Okay. Okay. Very good. So first of all, when you see muscle necrosis, we understand that there are potentially a lot of Vibrio harvii in the water, and that attack the shrimp, weak shrimp. So that is why we need to do water exchange first to make the pond cleaner. And if we do water disinfection like iodine, the most effective time is to do that at nighttime, because the disinfectants might be neutralized, might lose the effect with the sunlight. So it's much better to do that at nighttime.
Oh, bien pueda que se está escuchando, doctor Diego.
Es importante tener en cuenta que la luz del sol puede tener algún efecto sobre los desinfectantes, entonces por eso el doctor Locke recomienda las horas de la noche para hacer este tipo de prácticas. Eso es la versión reducida, ¿no? Pero sí, la resumida, pues.
Oh, pero es lo más importante, claro.
Sí. Next question, Dr. Locke.
Sure, please.
It's important for the ingredient fermentation technology that you show in the presentation that we use only soy, or we can use another raw material for this process.
Yeah.
Es importante, un segundo, doctor Locke. La pregunta tiene que ver con si es fundamental para una buena fermentación adecuada, si es indispensable que solo sea con soya o se puede utilizar alguna materia prima o alguna otra materia prima. Please, Dr. Locke.
Okay. So when we talk about soybean fermentation, that is for pond side application. I'm not talking about a feed mill. The reason why we chose soybean, because soybean has pretty high in protein content. So that means after the fermentation process, it is quite palatable to the shrimp. But if you can find other source of protein that is palatable to the shrimp, I think it's also work the same way. Not a problem at all.
No, el doctor Locke dice que se pueden utilizar otras fuentes o otros ingredientes para hacer la fermentación, que el motivo por el cual pone como ejemplo la soya es básicamente por la alta concentración de proteína y porque tiene muy buena palatabilidad para los camarones. Sin embargo, también él recuerda que es para ser utilizada, para ser aplicada en el estanque y no para ser utilizada como ingrediente para la preparación de alimentos para los animales, en la fábrica de alimentos como tal.
And one more point, I want to make it clear that the soybean fermentation, is not for feed replacement. Okay, I want to make it very clear. It's just only a tool for us to deliver the active probiotic into the shrimp more effectively. And typically, we will not feed this more than 1 or 2%, around 2% of the shrimp feed requirement. And during the disease outbreak, we can increase this to about 5% of the total feed.
Él recuerda que es importante tener en cuenta que la fermentación de ingredientes o de alimentos no es para reemplazar el alimento balanceado como tal, sino es una herramienta para mejorar la población de probióticos en el estanque como tal. Entonces no es un tema para reemplazar el alimento balanceado. Otra cosa importante es que generalmente en cualquier época se le puede dar más o menos un 1 o 2%, pero que en épocas que tenemos problemas con los patógenos pueden incrementar esa dosificación a un 5%. We have another interesting question, Dr. Locke, about what's the type of probiotic that you recommend for an effect in the intestinal tract of the shrimp.
Okay, so first of all, typically in my presentation, I just provide generic generic products. because I just afraid that, you know, I may make any bias, because for probiotic, there's a whole bunch of good probiotic out there in the market. But typically for this trial, we did the trial with the sponsor of a company named BioWish in the United States, and that probiotic in this trial show a very good effects on disease mitigation.
Do you have the name of the strain or something like that?
Yeah. Oh, you mean the bacteria, the probiotic strain, the bacterial strain? Typically is Bacillus.
Ah, bueno. Él generalmente no utiliza nombres genéricos en las presentaciones. Él nombró ahí a la empresa con la cual trabajó algunos ensayos que fueron mostrados ahí en la presentación, pero que generalmente un bacillus puede tener un muy buen efecto a nivel intestinal en los camarones. Doctor Espejo, ¿cuál otra pregunta, porfa?
Ventajas del hidróxido de sodio como desinfectante frente a la cal hidratada.
Advantage or disadvantage of the sodium hydroxide versus the calcium oxide for disinfection?
Okay, so for the sodium hydroxide, first of all, it's expensive, and it is and it is quite dangerous to handle, and sometimes you have no access to it. So typically we may use sodium hydroxide only for surface disinfection. For pond disinfection, using calcium oxide is a lot more effective and cost effective.
Bueno, él comenta que por un tema de costo y también por un tema de que es peligroso, es un químico peligroso el hidróxido de sodio, entonces él solo lo recomienda para limpieza de superficie y que generalmente para cuando es un tema de desinfección de estanques es mucho más fácil con la cal. ¿Alguna otra, doctor Espejo, que sea interesante?
Yo creo que no lo cansemos más. Yo creo que la audiencia ya hay una serie de preguntas que seguramente, doctor Diego, si nos ayuda,
claro que sí,
podemos después contestarlas, que nos escriban a los correos de tanto de Italcol como de su empresa, doctor Diego, y ya pues nosotros con su anuencia y con su grata colaboración, pues los podemos contactar con el doctor Locke. No quiero dejar pasar la oportunidad de destacar que el doctor Locke pertenece y es el CEO de un laboratorio, del laboratorio veterinario para camarones, de manera que seguramente podrán contactarlo a él para cualquier otra pregunta que tengan en Vietnam. Me parece que ya es suficiente y reitero mis agradecimientos. Dr. Locke, thanks a lot for your presentation, for your, muchísimas gracias por todo. Gracias a todos y no sé, doctor Diego, si alguna cosa más tenemos que adicionar.
No, por favor, que todas las preguntas que tengan todos los participantes de la presentación, que se las hagan llegar a Italcol. Con muchísimo gusto el Dr. Locke nos ayuda a responderlas. Dr. Locke, thank you very much for your presentation and for your time. I hope that this coronavirus situation ends soon and we can have you here in the region for a in vivo presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you all.
Bye. Doctor Diego, muchas gracias por todo, ¿yo?
Vale, gracias. Hasta luego. Chao, chao.
Y gracias a todos por colaborarnos y por su participación.
Bye-bye.